see if we can get rattled into it and see how things go. So, look, thanks very much, everybody, for joining us this evening. This is a new thing that we're trying, and it was in the back of a couple of questions that came up in the group a few weeks back, just with regards to nutrition. I had put up my spreadsheet, and Karen thankfully helped, sort of rejig and move a few things around, and it started a little bit of a debate, around nutrition, a few extra questions being asked, and Karen very kindly has offered up her time this Sunday evening just to answer a few questions. So we created a thread in the group there a few weeks back, and there were lots and lots of different questions there. So hopefully we're able to get those all answered for you this evening. There's going to be a little presentation, and then there'll be a little bit of time at the end just for other questions, which if you do sort of hold your questions off until the question and answer part, just in case your question is answered, we don't have to repeat anything or have to ask it over again, okay? So I did ask Karen earlier just to sort of give me a bit of her background, okay? So I'm going to bring that up now. Karen is a runner and a certified nutritionist. I think I've said that right, have I? I possibly butchered that there. Come into running later in life, Karen. You said you started running about 42 years of age.
42, yeah.
Brilliant. So
after lots of failures.
What was your why? Why did you start running?
Oh, definitely. It was something I always wanted to do. Now, I was reasonably athletic at school, played hockey and all that type of stuff. And the girls on the call will feel my pain. In my 20s, you couldn't get a good sports bra for love nor money, and it was far too sore to run. It was as simple as that. I could not get comfortable running. So I didn't persevere with it. And we were in Dubai when I was 42, and they had a fantastic sports shop, and I got fitted out, and that was it. That was the start of me running then for my holiday.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So
we got stuck in the Icelandic.
Started off doing a couple of 5Ks and 10Ks.
Yeah.
Then, you ran your first half marathon with a nice wee calf tear, and then jumped straight into ultras after that. What made you? Well, number one, why did you run on an injury, first of all?
Well, that's what we do, isn't it? So very early on, when I was training for a 10K, I had Achilles tendonitis, and my physio convinced me that you could keep running and taped me up. So yes, I learned the hard way that actually doesn't work, and just kept battling through everything. And it's one of the reasons I started studying nutrition, because I thought there's something missing in my diet. There's something missing in my training, too far, too fast, all the time, making the same mistakes over and over, and I wanted to change it. So yeah, I didn't know any better, and I was so stubborn. I was raising money for that half marathon, and I just didn't want to back out because I was fundraising. So I went.
What marathon was it?
It was Glasgow.
Glasgow. And what charity were you raising for at the time?
I can't remember. I think it might have been the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Very good. And then you jumped straight into ultras after that there. So what was your ultra? What was your first ultra?
The first one we did was half marathon des Sables in Fuerteventura. So it was 120 kilometers over 4 days, or 3 days to be more exact. So yeah, lots of sand dunes, pretty tough going. And I was still rehabbing my torn calf. So wasn't the fittest for it, if I'm being honest. So we went back the following year to do a wee bit better.
Brilliant. Would you recommend? I've seen that advertised quite a lot. Facebook seems to target me every year that comes up. Would you recommend it then as an event, as a organised event as well?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. They dumbed it down for the second year, so we didn't have the whole going through to 5 o'clock in the morning and going up goat trails up scree slopes, pretty scary in the middle of the night. So yeah, they've softened it, and they keep advertising that it's fine for walkers. So it depends on what your level of fitness is. If you're looking for a proper endurance race, it's probably a bit soft.
Okay.
But for a first one, fantastic. Yeah, great camaraderie and very well organised. Yeah, I would.
Brilliant. And is there campsites at that as well then? Is it?
Yeah, and they Yeah, they pre-position your tents and everything. So you're expected to carry all your food and all your equipment for the tent. So there was a fair wee bit of carrying, and you were self-sufficient for the whole 4 days. But yeah, you knew where you were going back to, and the route was well marked, so there was no map reading to be done or anything like that, which took the pressure off too.
That would definitely be needed for me because
Yeah.
I'm known to get lost in a straight line. No, that's great. And then you are a parkrun aficionado. Yourself and Gary have clocked up quite a number of them as well, featuring regularly on the parkrun reports too. Um, Mainly you tend to do sort of a lot down at Crawfordsburn and Bangor as well, I think is a regular one. But what's your favourite parkrun been then, Karen?
My favourite, oh, that's a tricky one. I actually think, weirdly, it's Crawfordsburn. Never did I think I would say that. Really hilly. I'm determined it's not going to beat me. I'm not a fast runner. I hate hills, but I can see the improvement from doing Crawfordsburn, which is why we keep going back. So
Brilliant.
yeah, scenery to die for, and one single lap, and I love that. I hate the repetition that so many of them have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Somebody did ask in the group there a couple of weeks back about park runs that had a single loop as well. And I think it's a mental thing as well. You have to do three loops and there's maybe hills or twists or turns. It sort of puts you off. One, right, I've done that once. Oh, here we go again. And then the
The
third
second
time.
one's such a waste, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, why am I doing it twice?
Yeah, so that's fantastic. So look, I think we've got good. Well, I'm hoping we've got good viewers coming on here now. So I think everybody can hear us well. Yeah, everybody seems to be hearing us well there. And there's about 10 viewing live so far. So I know it
Wow.
was 8 o'clock, so people will probably tune in here now, Karen. So, over to you for
Okay.
your presentation.
Okay, fantastic, Declan, and thanks very much for the opportunity. It's lovely to give a wee bit back because I think it's a great little forum that you have. It's a great group, and I hope people find this useful. I have to thank everybody that has posted questions, and I will do my very best to answer them. As Declan says, I've put together a bit of a presentation, and hopefully you'll find it useful, stroke interesting. As Declan says, if you have more questions that I haven't covered, please pop them into the chat there, and I will do my best to come to them. And if we kind of run out of time tonight, I will then IT issue. I will absolutely go into the group and pop some answers in there over the next couple of days. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And let's see how we go. So first of all, I suppose Declan's given me a lovely introduction. I am not a fast runner. So if anybody's looking at me for inspiration and thinking I have the nutrition to make myself fast, I don't. What I have done is made myself a little bit better, a little bit stronger, perhaps a little bit less injury prone. So hopefully some of that will come across this evening. As regards who I am, I'm a nutrition and lifestyle coach. So I'm saying that at the outset because it's really important that you understand I'm not a qualified dietitian or sports nutritionist. Okay, so I have boundaries and there's so much I can talk about and then I have to stop. So for this evening, a lot of the information I'm going to give you is fairly general. I won't be going into any personal information. So if you have a personal issue or something that you would like addressed, by all means, I'm very happy to have a chat with you offline. But because we're in a group, obviously I can't do that, nor will I be giving particularly supplement recommendations because it's not appropriate in a group setting either, and actually some of the supplements would be outside of my boundaries. I'm just making sure I'm telling you everything here by way of positioning myself. So nutrition and lifestyle coach, I studied for a year with the Institute of Health Sciences in Dublin. I did that following a career change. I was a banker for 28 years or so, amazingly enough. And I came out of banking to study nutrition because my husband, Gary, who most of you know, is a personal trainer, and his clients were struggling with their nutrition, struggling to lose weight, and I can help them there with meal plans and so forth. Plus, I was curious as to my own needs as a runner and somebody that would like to think that they are a work in progress as regards running. So that's a little bit about me. That's me in Half Marathon des Sables 2018, 2019, eating out of a very suspicious dehydrated box, which is what you do. But what we're going to cover tonight, I'm going to look briefly at macronutrients. One of the things I work with most of my clients is around getting the basic nutrition right first. So as sports people and athletes, I find that people come to me and they want the icing on the cake. They want the thing that's going to get them that extra 2 or 3% in speed or distance, and they're looking for supplements. And actually, what they need to do is spend a little bit more time on the basics first. I'm going to talk a little bit about fueling your run, some thoughts on weight loss. That was one of the questions. I'm going to look a bit at hydration, and for the ladies on the call, the monthly cycle. And actually, guys, maybe very useful to be more understanding of your running colleagues and partners. And then a little bucket for some of the other questions as well. So basics first, what makes a healthy diet? And this isn't rocket science, okay? It's a good broad brush of carbohydrates, protein, fats, and micronutrients. So those first three are your macronutrients, macro because they're the biggest part of your diet. Micronutrients because they're smaller portions, but equally as important. And when we talk about all of those, it's much more around the variety and the texture and getting as wide a range as possible. And clearly for runners, there's an element of getting the macronutrient split right. And fair to say that this conversation has come as a result of Declan sharing his fantastic spreadsheet, and it was such a delight to see somebody having put that thought and consideration into how they fuel their body and what the breakdown is. A lot of people get hung up on the right macronutrient percentages, and for most people it's not particularly relevant, but the more you run, the more athletic you are, the more you do need to focus on that and try to get it right. So let me just slide that out of my way. So I wanted to fire this up because carbohydrates get a bit of a bad rap. Now, I know that I'm talking to people here that recognise that it is a primary source of fuel. Unfortunately, or for understandable reasons, we've kind of become a little bit carbohydrate averse in society, and people are a little bit afraid of it. And every time I open the magazine, it's the latest low carb diet. And it's important to remember that not only does it provide the structure, but that's third point, beneficial gut bacteria. If we are not taking in enough fiber and we're not taking in enough quality carbohydrates, we actually aren't feeding those lovely population of bacteria in our gut that make sure that our immune system is fully functioning. And whilst we're out running and busting our gut, actually it's our immune system that quite often is taking a hammering. So actually the carbohydrates is putting our guts in a good space, as well as providing us with the energy that we need. Bulking out the stools, because stools is always a great conversation in the page, I thought I might as well throw that in there. And the right carbohydrates help balance our blood sugar levels and keep our moods in a better way. From the key energy source, worth just reminding ourselves that the reason carbohydrates are a key energy source is it's readily convertible to our body's preferred fuel, which is glucose. So the body breaks the carbohydrate down into glucose and stores it in our muscles and in our liver for the most part. And actually, if we are fully fueled, the muscles and the liver can store up to about 580 grams equivalent of carbohydrates, which is enough to keep us going for some considerable length of time. But we need to be effectively and fully fueled to make the proper use of that. So this is just a reminder. This is something that I shared I run an 80-20 club, and the girls were blown away by, what do you mean all carbs are actually sugars? So every single carbohydrate, doesn't matter whether it's a plant, whether it's a vegetable, whatever it is a sugar. Some of them are simple, so the likes of here where we're seeing glucose as being a monosaccharide, very easily absorbed. Disaccharides as well hit your bloodstream much, much quicker than those complex carbohydrates. So we're seeing there the simple carbohydrates, your jams and sugars and so forth. And the things that we'd typically think about eating on a run, your gels and all of that, they're simple carbohydrates. The complex carbohydrates are simply that was very inappropriate, but are essentially more molecules lumped together in various different structures that our body is a little bit more challenged to break down, if it can break it down at all. And it's those non-starchy, insoluble fiber and soluble fiber that actually are the what we want to tap into for longer term glycogen stores. So that's what you're going to ideally want to eat to build those glycogen stores up in preparation for your long runs and your races. So those should be the building block, if you like, of your diet, whereas those simple carbs are very much what you would be tending to eat on the run. Can't talk about macronutrients without talking about protein. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on protein because protein is not particularly readily convertible as fuel for runners. But it is important because remember that we need protein to build and repair our body tissues. So when you've had a hard workout, whether it's strength training or whether it's running, you will be making little tears in your muscle fibers. That's why we get a little bit sore. It breaks down and we need the protein back in there to rebuild. We need it to coordinate functions, the structural framework, immune system, transportation and storage of nutrients. And I think I have a comment there at the bottom about acting as an energy source if required. And it's really just as a last resort that your body will go and sort of cannibalize itself, if you like. So if you haven't fueled correctly with carbohydrates, as a last resort, your body will dip into protein. So on Declan's spreadsheet, he had put himself in as a protein requirement of 1.2 to 1.4 grams per body weight, and that's absolutely 100% right. The jury would be out on just how much we actually need. We live in a society that is protein mad, and actually the vast majority of clients that come to me are overdoing the protein. Now, there's no real side effect to it. It's not a big drama. But if we think that as runners, it's important for us to fuel ourselves, right? If we can't use the protein as an energy source and we're taking in too much, we're actually just putting our system under too much pressure. So the likes of that 1.2 to 1.4 gram per kilo body weight is about right. To go up to 2 is 100% okay as well. And I'm conscious that most of you, if you're not doing it, should be doing some strength training, and actually that supports your body's repair from strength training as well. So I've just written down here just as a bit of a guideline, where you are doing body weight training. If you're doing 5 hours of body weight training a week, your 1.2 to 1.4 is accurate. If you're up at 15 or 20, you're actually going to want to increase that to the 1.8 to 2 grams per kilo body weight. So that's just a wee bit of information on the protein. And actually, just while that comes up there, the 20 amino acids, 9 of them are essential. So we need to get them in from our food. Your body stores protein, your body rebuilds it. So when you eat protein of any type, your body breaks it down into its constituent amino acid and builds it back up to what it needs. So if it feels that it needs to focus on repairing and protecting cartilage, it'll reformulate collagen. That's probably not a great example, but literally where your body needs to put that protein to, it will choose. So it's a bit like we say, you can't choose where you lose fat. In many ways, you can't choose where you put your protein. Your body will put it to where it needs to be. So I'm conscious we had a couple of questions the feed around protein. And the first one, if I remember right, was protein shakes, yes or no, basically. So first of all, most of us should be able to get protein from our normal diet. There's absolutely no reason that the wide range of products available, we shouldn't have to. But actually, I am a fan of protein shakes generally. I use them a lot with clients who, in particular, don't eat breakfast. So I'm a firm believer in having protein with every meal and every snack. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It's just to give you that balanced meal. Protein slows down the absorption of sugar, so it stops any of those big bumps in your blood sugar levels that lead to cravings and highs and lows and so forth. But it also makes you feel fuller for longer. So for particularly ladies, I have to say, that come to me and they don't eat breakfast, we quite often start off with something that's a simple shake with some protein powder in it, and it works really well. And also, like, I would quite often add protein to my porridge. What I tend to do is put a very general protein powder. So, depending on what you want, go and Google it and they'll promise you everything. I go for one that's good quality, has no fillers, no additives. At the moment, I'm using New Zest because I just like the flavour more than anything else. But a good whey protein, if you're not lactose intolerant, is easily digestible and actually will give you a good breadth of those amino acids. So yeah, by all means, if you can't get enough protein, or and I know shift work was mentioned on the feed as well. If shift work is making it difficult to get 3 square meals in, by all means, look at a good quality protein supplement. And the other question was about protein on a budget, and I guess we're all feeling the pinch a little bit with the food prices and everything else going up. And in fact, my shopping bill is just getting a little bit ridiculous. So a couple of things here that I bet you I didn't bring my Post-it in, I'm raging. So choice of cuts of meat. So I am somebody that doesn't typically eat the dark meat on chicken or turkey or so forth. But actually, I have found different recipes that it's more than tolerable and I'm really enjoying it. And the difference in price, and I'm sorry, I have a Post-it sitting in the other room. It's something like chicken breast is something like £8.30 a kilo, something like that. Chicken thigh fillets, £4. I'm going to say £4.94 or something per kilo. The chicken thighs with the skin on it and the bone still in were a third of that price. They were £1.64. Like, that's quite a saving, and the only difference you're doing is in how you cook it and how you plan to use it. The quality of the meat. here's my assistant has just brought in my Post-it notes, and I will check. So thighs with the skin on are £2.60 a kilo. So I was exaggerating how much you could save. The breast is higher protein content, but that's only because as a percentage, there's more fat on the thighs with the skin. But you know what? You're taking the skin off, So look at the cuts of meat. Look at what, don't go for the expensive cuts. Go for something that's a bit cheaper. Check out your supermarkets. Check out the sell-by dates. There is no shame in buying something that's best by the day you're buying it and sticking it in your freezer. It'll save you a clean fortune as well. Get the bonus buys. Doesn't have to be meat, doesn't have to be fish. Your beans and pulses and seeds and nuts are a fantastic supply of protein. And what I would say there is, on the cost side of things as well, where you're buying your chia seeds, don't go into Tesco and Sainsbury's. It's just madness. If you're using them in any sort of volume, go online. And I hate the carbon footprint conversation as well, but money's money. If you go on to Whole Foods or real food sources, all of these, you will get 10 times the amount of nuts and seeds, beans, pulses than you will on any supermarket shelf. And they're the same quality. It just means that you have the hassle of storing them. Okay, so if you've got drawers, if you've got cupboards, I have 2 shelves up here bunged full of Kilner jars. Make a display of them, and find ways to do things a little bit cheaper. Tins of chickpeas, tins of kidney beans, haricot beans, everything else. They're cheap, but by buying them dried, they're cheaper again. One of my favourite things to do now is, rather than make a meat-based chilli, we'll quite often have a bean-based chilli, or we'll make a mixture half and half and make it go a little bit further. I'm a firm believer in meal planning, and that's another way that you will save, because actually you'll be cooking once to eat twice or 3 or 4 times, depending on the size of your freezer. So that's another way you can save on actually energy costs as well. So lots of things there. If you are a fan of hummus, making your own hummus will be a portion of the cost of buying hummus. And you can add whatever flavours you want into it as well. So yeah, I hope there's a couple of ideas in there. And I'm sure actually if we started a feed in the group, there would be lots of other ideas that everybody could share as well. So fats, and this was something that I challenged Declan a little bit on his spreadsheet about. So fats, to me, as somebody that grew up in the 80s, along with all these people that were telling us that if you eat fat, you'll be fat, so ran away from fat. We forgot for a long time about just how important fat was. And whilst you can see there about insulation and all that type of stuff, it's the hormone creation and it's the cell membranes that in particular I would draw your attention to. So cell membranes, every one of our cell membrane is surrounded by a fatty layer. That fatty layer allows our fluids to move in and out of our cells. So when we're talking about hydrating our cells right and getting the fluids to empty from our stomachs into our bloodstream and to work to sweat, we need the molecules of water to move through various cell membranes. And if they're not flexible and elastic and porous enough, they're not going to do that. And it's those healthy fats that allow that to happen. Hormone creation is vital, and at the risk of sounding very sexist, particularly for females in the group, if we don't have enough hormones, if we don't have enough fats, we're not going to build hormones. If we're not eating fats, and we are over-fueling or overtraining, we are at risk of giving ourselves severe hormonal imbalances, and nobody really wants that at all. At the bottom there, I talk about energy. 60% of our resting energy coming from fat, and actually, it's when you're sitting doing nothing, your body's not tapping into your carbohydrate stores. Your body is primarily tapping into your fat stores, and your brain is 100% made, or it's essentially, I think it's 66% made of fat, and it's probably the only part while you're at rest that's actually feeding off glucose. So fats, to me, are the bit that people forget. They carry so many of our essential vitamins. So any of our fat-soluble vitamins will not be carried around our bodies, and that's including your vitamin D, which is so important for our immunity. So if we're not having that way of moving it around the body, we're missing out on the absorbability of some of those nutrients. Now, I will say on this slide that the quality of fat's important, and you'll all know that if we talk about the good, the bad, and the absolutely horrendous, the horrendous is the saturated fats, or the hydrolyzed fats, even worse, the trans fats, and that's something that as athletes you should be doing your very best to stay away from. And what I would really recommend is that you stock up on your omega-3s as much as possible. So you'll be getting them in your salmon and your walnuts, and actually your nuts and seeds generally will supply good sources of omega-3s to keep those cell membranes healthy and reduce inflammation. So that's the other thing that your healthy fats are doing. And with all the will in the world, no matter while you're training, you're continually looking for muscle adaptation. That's putting your body under stress. It's causing inflammation, and it's these healthy fats that are going to help remove that. So lots of oily fish, lots of salmon, sardines, and mackerel, or else walnuts and flax seeds as a good plant-based source. Okay, and last one as regards background, micronutrients. And actually, they used to be called, when they were first discovered, they were called accessory growth factors. And I think, it does what it says in the tin. Without our micronutrients, we can get all the right stuff from they get the numbers right on the macros, but we need to be very careful that we're getting the full range of your vitamins and minerals and those phytonutrients that help minimize inflammation and give us the energy, give us the immune response, give us the antioxidants that we need to keep our bodies functional. So from a running perspective, our B vitamins are essential for energy conversion. If we are low in iron, we will be really struggling on an energy level. But as well as that, if we haven't got sufficient vitamin C, our body isn't able to absorb that iron. So it's really important that where you're eating the likes of lentils or a steak that's high in iron content, that you try to pair that up with a vitamin C source to get the maximum from that. So there's lots of little nuances around the micronutrients that we need to be aware of. And we'll look at it a little bit more when we talk about electrolytes. We'll think about sodium, we'll think about calcium, potassium, and just the impact that they have on the body, particularly from a runner perspective. Okay. So because we mentioned macro splits earlier, I thought worthwhile bringing this up. So a starting point with a lot of my clients is this: what is generally recommended? And you can see they're quite wide bands. They're not particularly prescriptive. Most people could fit into it relatively easily. And those are the recommendations so that people have the right energy, so that people are getting to repair muscle and tissue, and so that we are looking after the hormone creation and the cell maintenance and so forth. For weight loss, it changes a little bit, and you'll not be surprised to see that the carbohydrate level comes down a little bit, and that's purely the sugars. It's nothing particularly bad around carbohydrate. It's just that it's worth bringing that down where people have weight loss in mind, and actually supporting with fat. So there's a lot of evidence that shows increasing omega-3s in particular, because of the anti-inflammatory effect, that actually very, very helpful in weight loss. And then we have this one for endurance, and this is not this is open to debate, like everything to do with running, and it depends on your view. It also depends on your makeup, so that there's absolutely no one size fits all for any of this. And I wish there was. It would make life so much easier. But for some people, depending on how far they go on a particular race day, that carbohydrate level might go up to 70%. And the fat one may come down a little bit. I would recommend that any extra carb that's required, that it's taken from the protein source on the endurance rather than the fat, because of the whole idea of fat metabolism and so forth, and the wanting to keep your cells fluid. So the protein is the one that you can decrease, but not to go below the 10% of overall calorie intake. That would be the recommendation. So I think this is worthwhile just looking at, because we've already said that carbohydrates are the primary source of fuel. So what exactly are we talking about? So for a 70 kilo athlete there who's doing moderate exercise program, we're talking there about 350 to 490 grams of carbs, which is like 1400 to 1960 calories. For the vast majority of us, to look at something like this is actually probably all we really need. Okay, and I mean that Declan, because of how he trains, and Declan, sorry, I hope you don't mind that I keep referencing you like this, but because of how he trains, he needs to periodize his eating to go along with his periodized training. So depending on where you are on that, from couch, from me doing a few 5Ks and the odd 10K at the moment, through to doing ultras, will dictate what you need to do here. If you're literally the person that is out doing 2 5Ks a week, you will be able to think about your overall calorie intake and your overall carbohydrate intake pretty much as being the same day in, day out. It's a little bit like thinking about your hydration and so forth. If you're out running for 30 minutes or less than 60 minutes, it's not a big issue. So therefore, when we go through some of the other slides here, I'm keen that we think about this is for longer, more sustained runs that we need to be more cognizant of how we're fueling ourselves. So our bodies are massively clever and adapt very, very quickly. So we have muscle adaptation, we think about our training program adapting ourselves, but actually for low intensity or for moderate exercise program, our bodies kind of just roll with it. It can cope quite well. You just want to make sure that you are not leaving yourself absolutely starving and far too hungry. Okay, so that's, and actually what you'll see on Declan's spreadsheet is that he has his days, whilst it's not like moderate, high, very high, he talks about his rest day and the intensity of his program. And you can see actually his carb targets in there for each of those days is not a million miles away from where this is. It was pretty much bang on. So how do we get that, the carbohydrates in? So I'm a firm believer in certainly telling people. I don't necessarily do it myself as well as I should. And that's something that even as I was putting this presentation together, I was really thinking I need to spend a bit more time on it. So ideally, before a long run or a high intensity run, you want to have a full meal that works for you and with you. So something that you know you like, something that you know doesn't cause stomach upset. And you're wanting to do that 2 to 3 hours before to give your body time to digest it, to start allowing the glucose out into the system. And if you've got a sensitive stomach, you're trying to keep the fibre content low. Now, I know, guys, that most of us go running first thing in the morning, and 2 to 3 hours before is an awful long time. And certainly, I think it's worthwhile doing. If you're looking at a marathon or you're embarking on an ultra, it's something that you really should be considering. And then as well as that, the hour before, you want to top that up. So the whole idea is that you go out to that race or that longest run as topped up as you possibly can be. So an hour before, something that's not a meal, but it's a lighter sort of snack, and it's mixed macros. So a little bit like I was saying earlier on, ideally, I would love to see a little bit of protein in there, but it doesn't have to be. And it's something that if you try that and it doesn't sit with you, then ditch it, because not everybody can cope with protein an hour or that closely to their run. And I'm a classic example. So an hour before park run, I will typically have a bowl of porridge with some of my protein powder in it, and that's fine. But there has been a time when I've put nut butter in instead, and for some reason it doesn't work for me. So I've learned that even though it's a protein for protein, it just doesn't really agree with me. So that's an hour before topping up. And then right before, if you can, not a gel. I see people standing at marathon lines and they're putting their gel to their mouth, and I'm thinking, oh crumbs, you're going to have, well, for me, you're going to have 5 or 6 hours of taking gels. How much sugar do you really want? But even if you're a faster runner, I would suggest it's something a little bit more substantial, something that's going to stick to your bones a little bit longer, is worthwhile considering. And then during, for shorter runs, less than 60 minutes, my firm, there's not normally a requirement to fuel. I don't think anybody really does. What I will say is that depends on your own makeup. If running is new to you and you are going out and you're doing 35 minutes really, really hard, I would suggest, maybe you do want a snack then and you walk the rest home again. But, you should be able to go out 60 minutes and you're not depleting your glycogen stores sufficiently to need to be topped up. You should be able to hold enough to cope with that. And actually, I had written some figures down here. So as regards knowing whether your glycogen stores are full, so if you have a protocol where you are feeding yourself sufficiently well in advance, so we're talking about, if you're going to do a marathon and you've been fueling yourself and increasing your carbohydrate percentages in the days running up to your marathon, fully carved up, if you like, your leg muscles will hold most of the 8% of your leg muscle weight it will hold in glycogen, and your liver will hold 2.5% of your body weight in glycogen stores. So it's sufficient absolutely to keep you going and to fuel for something between 1,400 and 2,000 calories of glycogen within your muscles. So this is why the shorter runs, you shouldn't need to tap into any additional fueling, because if you've got up to 2,000 of calories stored readily accessible to your body, why would you need more? Over your 60 minutes of low intensity or over 30 minutes of high intensity, it is absolutely worth considering refueling after the 30-minute mark. And I have found that it's worthwhile. I remember when I first looked at endurance running and for the half marathon, to establish what do we need, when do we need to eat it. And at that stage, I was reading everything, after the hour. And I found that actually you needed to get in before that hour, because if you waited the hour, you were running out of energy. So you're trying to preempt that and keep topping yourself up. And there, quite clearly, we know I struggled this morning out in my run, I have to say. The warmer it is and the longer, the more you have to think about it. So after any run, 30 minutes, replacing the glycogen stores after the run. So when you come back in, you're wanting to actually make sure that your body gets refueled as quickly as possible. And actually, ideally, they're introducing an element of protein as well. And the ideal ratio they talk about is 4 carb to 1 protein. And actually, rather than get particularly hung up on it, carrot battens and hummus, Greek yogurt and fruit. One of the best ones actually is your chocolate milk. And there's been lots of studies showing how that is like the perfect quick top up after a run. This morning we came in and we actually had a smoothie, and it was primarily fruit and some milk providing the protein in that, and I put some nut butter in as well, and that was perfect. And because it was so cold, I used the frozen fruit, so it actually cooled us down as well. Ideally, actually, you're going to try and time those runs to come in that it's time, you're going to be coming home to a meal. And if you can do that, there's no need to have that balanced snack at all. And that's something that as you build out your fueling plan, you can actually build that into your, to run alongside your train plan. When are you going to eat, and do you need to have the snack as well? I'm conscious some of the girls were asking about weight loss, and I think this is something that actually can go against us sometimes from a weight loss perspective, because we're coming in we are hungry, our hormones are all over the place. They're telling us we're starving, or the opposite. And this is the annoying thing. Ghrelin can actually be either telling you you're absolutely starving after a run when you're not really, or it can be totally suppressed depending on where you've been, what way you've been training, and can start you thinking that it's not important to refuel. And I think we're far better actually sticking to the science and saying, we know we need to, and we're going to do something. So if you're coming in at time for a balanced meal, then have the balanced meal. If it's going to be 2 hours, have a quick snack in the interim, but it can be a quick snack that's only 100, 150 calories. It doesn't have to be anything massively substantial. So a little bit on endurance fueling, and you can see there on the right-hand side, I've talked about 30 to 60 grams of carbs per hour. So our bodies can only take in a certain amount of carbs. And the reason I've got the asterisk there, by the way, is that some endurance runners over time can train themselves to take up to 90 grams of carbs. And I genuinely don't know how they do it. It would totally kill me. I would be so bloated. But my experience with clients is, and I wish I had put animation on this slide, runners typically underfuel more so in training than the actual run. And I think I commented on Declan's post that that's the case. They haven't looked at the calculators. Females in particular, I have to say, are so focused on losing weight that they underfuel, and they purposely underfuel. And we have to remember that we're just causing damage. If we're underfueling, then our body isn't able to get on with the business it needs to get on with. So it's going to steal nutrients from somewhere else. So if you're out training and you're hitting the wall, and you've no glycogen stores and you've nowhere else to get, it will start eating away at your muscle. And we all know we lose muscle at a rate of knots from the age of 30 onwards. We don't need to lose muscle unnecessarily. But as well as that, the underfueling and training is just going to lead us into a situation where we have more injury. And we're not going to meet our goals, our training goals at all, because we're not feeding ourselves enough to do that. The other thing is on race day, a lot of people overestimate what they need to take hour by hour. And I think this might actually be partly to do with the whole PR piece around gels and so forth. But you can see over to the right-hand side there, if a gel is 24 to 30 grams of carbohydrates roughly, you need a maximum of 2 of those an hour. Some people will only need 1. And yet people come to me and they talk about having 3 or 4, and then they wonder why they have maybe an upset stomach, or they're feeling sluggish. If you are ingesting too many carbs, it's just going to slow you down. It's going to sit in your stomach. It's got nowhere to go. But as well as that, it's causing our body to redivert its what it needs to do. So as we run, the longer we run, the more our body needs to divert blood to our muscles to support our muscles, to get enough oxygen in there and get whatever nutrients and get glucose to our muscles to work. If we've taken on more carbohydrate than we can digest, it means the body's having to redivert blood back to the stomach and the digestive tract to try to sort that out. So actually it's tiring our muscles, and our muscles aren't getting the support. So it's not even that you're just overeating, you're actually undermining everything you're trying to do. And because this amount of carbohydrates is so high, the other thing is we need to train. So you'll go out and you'll train miles on feet, and you'll do all that, and you'll think about when you're doing your tempo run or when you're doing your hills. But actually you need to go out there and do the when am I going to eat, how am I going to eat. And the fuel plan, I say 6 to 8 weeks pre-event. We're doing New York Marathon this November, and we're just starting to think about what our fuel plan might be. And of course, because we're going to New York, you're not allowed a bag and so forth. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge. I'll need to pick your brain, Declan, on what you did when you were there. But that fuel plan and practicing, I read a great piece by, if anybody knows, Jeff Godet. And he talked about, it's not even just the content of your fuel plan. It's not even, are you going to do gels? Are you going to do tailwind? What are you going to do? It's even how are you going to take your drink at the drink station? Are you going to take their cup? Have you practiced drinking on the run for those speedier? Thankfully, I'm not speedy enough. I'm quite happy to stop and have a conversation if I need to. But how are you going to do that? Have you practiced eating on the hoof? There's so much to consider in that plan, and that's why 68 weeks pre-event gives you plenty of time to change your mind as to what is appropriate for you, and it's even the simple things like what flavour of sports drink. And I know I used to love the tailwind berry, and actually the smell of it now kind of makes me barf, so you really do have to put some time into that. Controversial question, the fasted running, and we all have slightly different views, and the science is quite different on fasted running as well. And the first thing I wanted to say on that was that training fasted is training under stress. So it's the same way as you would go out and do your longest runs or your tempo runs. You're trying to get that muscle adaptation. So fasted running is another way of adapting your body. So a couple of ways to look at it. First of all, I think it was Alison that talked about not being able to eat in the morning before going out for a run. And we've already said actually that you don't need to refuel on your 30 or 60 minute runs, depending on the nature of it. And my own personal feeling is that if you absolutely can't tolerate a breakfast before you go for a run, if it's only going to be 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, it's not a big deal. Don't upset yourself, and don't have yourself going out and feeling crazy. It's not worth it. If you are running longer, however, there really is something that you should think about. So fasted training is considered if you haven't eaten 10, 14 hours before you go out. Arguably, if you have eaten within that window, it's not quite fasted because you will still be living off the calories that you've taken on the previous evening meal, probably. I say there that running fuel will help you feel better, perform better, recover better, and be better prepared for race day. I'm a firm believer in going out the door fully fueled. And I'm going to say as well, that's from experience. I don't cope particularly well running on empty. And it's one of the reasons that I think that I had so many injuries. Where our glycogen stores are limited, we are being forced to use fat. And by using fat, the argument is that we can adapt, but actually, if you're not used to using fat to fuel yourself, you're back to this issue where your body is going to go to the place that it can get it quickest, and that might be at the expense of your muscle. And yeah, the senses and the science would be that that we need the fuel to get the most out of our training. Now, I've said here, and I went to a James Morton. Dr. James Morton was presenting in Bangor Library 2 or 3 years ago, and he's Sky Sports. And he was saying that deliberately training with low carbohydrate availability can improve the aerobic muscle adaptability. And it can do, but it's not something that you're going to get on a 30 or 60 minute training. You're going to get that much longer term, because our bodies will first of all go to glycogen, always will go glycogen first, and we're needing to encourage it to go to fat. And typically we're doing that on the longer runs. So anybody that's running endurance, the longer you go at a steady pace, and we're talking 60% VO2 max, the longer you go there, the more your body is tuned in to tapping into the fat sources. But like I say, this is the sort of thing, to my mind, it's a personal choice. But if you're going longer than 30 to 45 minutes, you really want to think about making sure that you're fueling yourself so that your body's not stealing from your muscle mass and taking it from somewhere else. Also, much less likely to hit the wall, much less likely to, the Americans call it bonk, which amuses me no end. Underfueling can lead also to eating disorders, and I've seen that with some of my clients where they almost wear the badge with pride that they can go out and train fasted, and before you know it, actually their bodies have adapted. They don't understand the hunger signals. They're not getting hunger cues, and they're ill as a result of it. What I would say is, if you can, to think about training your body to eat in the morning. And I mentioned earlier on about working with clients with smoothies, and it doesn't necessarily have to be protein, but if you can think about taking on something that is a very like a banana and milk type of a smoothie to start the process off, and start somewhere to introduce food in the morning to get you out there. Do have to say that there's evidence that would suggest that females can cope better with fasted running, and that is pretty much because of our estrogen levels. So there are times during our monthly cycle that actually, when the estrogen levels are high, that we're not tapping into stored glycogen as much. So because of that, this is one of the reasons they think females are better at converting fat, particularly for endurance running and so forth. So it's not you can't do it, it's you do it with care and understand that it may come at a cost of increased injury. So Declan had asked about getting the trots, and I think Vincent's answer about Imodium, probably 100%. It might be the quick win and the easiest win. So one of the first things I noticed when I started running was that things moved a lot quicker than I was expecting, and it wasn't particularly pleasant. And I remember asking a girl in work, was this normal? And she looked at me like horrified. We don't talk about things like that in the bank, dear, but with time, it got better. For me, it was very much that movement, that juggling around. It increases the secretions in your gut. And yes, it will increase the motility, and things move through really quickly. I think the first port of call is to check whether you're eating something that is causing you specific gut irritation. And it could be something innocuous, but I would recommend to people keeping a diary, and irrespective of whether you get the trots or anything else in this presentation, keep a diary of what you're eating, how you feel, how it impacts your performance, how it impacts your gut, what you liked, what you didn't like, because that information is superb. You can go back to it again and again and continually tweak it. But yeah, check what foods, and remember that race nerves can make it all worse. Although I'm not sure that you get too nervous before a race at all, Declan. But yeah, some things that are worth considering. If you have high fiber foods, are you eating them a little bit too close to the event? Have you taken on board any artificial sweeteners, either knowingly or by accident? I remember having a favorite mint one time that was full of sorbitol, and it just wasn't very pleasant to me at all. Increasingly, people are saying they're dairy intolerant, or they can't stomach dairy particularly well. Caffeine's a known irritation in the gut for some people. Your spicy foods and your energy gels may all be a little part of that. And I mentioned earlier on about your blood flow moving away from the gut, and that actually could be part of it. Have you actually overeaten a little bit? Is there something sitting and you haven't had that gastric emptying that you would have really wanted? So a few things to think about would maybe be allowing 2 hours between your last solid food, if this is something that's a problem for you. So don't do that necessarily small snack an hour before you go out the door. Drink plenty of water. Cooler temperatures will diminish gut irritations typically, and limiting the anti-inflammatories. So I know certainly we had plenty of warnings before any of the endurance runs not to be using the paracetamol and all the rest of it. But we know they can cause irritation as well, and actually hide some of the discomfort, which can be a little bit worrying. And the other thing, sticking to the same foods in training, and I think it sounds a wee bit obvious, but sometimes we forget. Sometimes we're away somewhere, we're staying overnight, and the breakfast is different than we ideally would want, and we need to maybe consider that as well. I have no idea how we're doing for time. Declan, what do we like? Way over already.
Coming up to about 5 to 9 at the moment, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Right. Okay. Weight loss goals. You see, I told you I was doing slides to keep me honest. Weight loss goals. So I'm going to start whizzing now. Okay. What I will say is, ask yourself, is it compatible with your training? Okay. Weight loss is very, very difficult when you're training for something. If you're within 6 weeks of a race, your last 5 pounds is not going to be as much of an advantage as being correctly fueled, trained properly, and getting the right recovery. And it is possible. And all these things are things that you might want to think about. But what I would say is, don't be doing it when you're training for an event. Do it if you're a casual runner, you're running to enjoy it. By all means, remember, you need the calorie deficit. If you have a calorie deficit, you're not going to be fueling yourself correctly, and you can expect to feel tired. You can expect to hit the wall out in shorter runs, and you can expect a shakier overall recovery. So I have loads more to say on that, but we'll pick it up again. And if people have questions, pop them into the chat. Hydration needs. You can read that 66% of your body is water, every cellular function. Remember, your exercise or heat will increase your needs by 5 or 6 times. Evidence suggests that you target replenishing 85 to 90% of your loss. Your body can hold that 10%, it doesn't mind. And hydrating the body, those are very general. So that is almost like a rule of thumb. And what I would say is that 125 mils to 185 mils every 15 minutes is the key to keeping your hydration levels topped up. It's not always possible, but that's what you're actually aiming for, and using hydration packs and so forth will help with that. Sweat calculation is something that is something I would really recommend to anybody that's doing longer runs, if you're a heavy sweater in particular. Take your body weight before exercise, totally stripped, having cleared out everything. Weigh yourself again afterwards, check the change in that, adjust by what you have drunk. And I know this is a bit difficult, but what you may have excreted while you were out for your run, and the exercise time, and that will give you an idea of how much you need to replace or replenish in the period that you're out running for. We can make these slides available afterwards. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium are the key electrolytes we need to be concerned about. Some people will tell you not to be overly worried about them, that your body will adjust and this whole idea of homeostasis will kick in. And I am very skeptical from personal experience. I get cramps I get that horrible twitchiness if I haven't got my electrolytes right. And even today, I came in and I had been just drinking water while I was out for my run. And while I was stretching my legs, I had those whole electric currents running up and down my legs. So absolutely, I hit the zero and got those electrolytes back into me. We do have different types there. Your isotonic is your fluid, your electrolytes, and your 6 to 8% carbohydrates. So that's the ideal balance of carbs into your water. And your hypotonic is just your fluid, electrolytes, and a very small amount of carbs, so not as much fuel in there. And your hypotronic is very high carb, and actually part of your nutrition plan and your fueling plan, as part of that, you will decide which ones you need. And I would suggest the starting point is your sweat loss calculator, because from that, you'll be able to work out how much liquid you're replacing with calories in it. And that will then tell you how many additional calories you need to take on board. Okay, that's a little make your own drink, because we were talking about saving money earlier. Cooling, this is specifically for Connor. So Connor, you had asked about spearmint or mint being a coolant, and the science is against that. What I would say is anything with menthol gives you a feeling of being cooler. So if it works for you, do it. Because even if it's psychological, sometimes I think it's still worth doing. So yeah, keep at it. Increasingly, people are talking about ice slush for cooling. So this was from Asker Shukendrup. If you follow him on Instagram, he's very good, and it's all supported by science. The difficulty with this is longer term, it can sort of confuse your body where it is no longer sweating for you. So if you're taking slushes on before you go out and you're cooling your body down to that extent at the core, your hypothalamus may not trigger that you've increased heat and you need to sweat to cool down more effectively. So check that out, mysportscience.com. I would suggest read that article and see what you think. And there's loads of other articles in there that I would recommend. Joe Declan, I'm actually thinking rather than go into menstrual cycle today, maybe we do a different one. Because it's quite key for some of the ladies, and I don't want that I rush through it for them.
Rush through that one, yeah, that's great, of course, yeah, absolutely.
So that's just some key considerations. I'm sorry that I rabbited so much earlier on, and actually there was so much more content that I wanted to throw in, and I didn't realise that I'd been waffling so much. But yeah,
you were waffling at all. It was really, really good, really, really interesting. So.
I did say before we went live that it was probably too much to try to do in one night. And I know there's some questions that I didn't answer either, so I'm going to pop questions to those into the Facebook. Probably not tonight, if I'm being honest, yeah, but tomorrow and the next day. Anything that hasn't been answered, I'll put a little post into it instead.
Awesome, Karen. Absolutely fantastic. Look, there was a couple of extra wee questions on the page there as well. Yeah, but again, we can pick those up at a later date. Again, we don't want to take up too much of your time, too much of everybody's time on a Sunday evening as well, whatever we've got tomorrow. So look, we can see your fantastic socials there, your Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. So hopefully everybody does give you a wee follow there, and they can connect with you. I know that you couldn't and can't and shouldn't be answering sort of, individual questions on a group setting like this here, because it is so individual to each person a lot of the time. So if anybody does have any questions, I'm sure they can reach out to you and ask those questions if they need a little bit more help with that there. Um, so look, I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time this evening. Thanks very much for watching, everybody as well. There's a lot of positive comments coming through there too, both through Messenger and on the thread there too, Karen. So
Great.
look,
Well,
really really good.
I hope there was something, even just food for thought. If it's opened up a conversation, great. Yeah, and yeah, I hope it was useful.
No, definitely, definitely, and you know, I say there's a lot that we didn't get covered, and if we can possibly do another one, if it's not too much, just to cover those other things off, I'm more than happy to facilitate that there if you've got the time
Great.
as well.
Great. Yeah, happy to.
Awesome, awesome. Look, I'm going to stop the live video.